There we go. And oh, I see what's happening. Interesting. And we're live. Um, my name is Rebecca Hogue, and we are virtually connecting with the folks doing a Wikimedia workshop at the digital. Oh, stand by. It opened up a window and I saw myself and heard myself. Like, ah. We're still figuring out the foibles of using Zoom and go live, and yeah, the 20-second delay, which was very interesting. Anyways, yeah, so we're virtually connecting with the folks in Fredericksburg at the Digital Pedagogy Lab, and in particular in this session, we'll talk to the folks that are working on some Wikimedia editing. And so let's start by doing some introductions, and I'll ask the virtual people to introduce themselves first. So we'll start with John. And then Nathan and Paloma, assuming that your microphones work.
Hi, I'm John Stewart. I'm the Assistant Director at the Office of Digital Learning at the University of Oklahoma. And I've been doing Wikipedia stuff for a long time and just wanting to see what Sarah's doing at DigiPed Lab.
Howdy. Nathan, do you have audio? That doesn't, we're not hearing anything. It's audio muted. Paloma?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Paloma Rafferty, and I am the director of the Institute for Professional Development at the Online Learning Consortium. And this is my first virtually connecting meeting, so bear with me as I get used to what you're all going to do here.
So it's Jennifer. Okay.
Well, Paloma. I go by Paloma.
Oh, you go by Paloma. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Okay. And Sarah, over to the on-sites.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah Lona-Switchwillick. I am the Director of Digital Pedagogy and Media at Middlebury in Vermont. And I am I said convening a workshop, convening this workshop at Digital Pedagogy Lab on that we titled "Let's Make EdTech Wikipedia Better," and I can tell you more about what we meant by that after we do introductions. Sarah is one of the participants.
Hi, I'm Sarah D'Angelo Antonio. I'm a professor of English at Franklin Pierce University, and I'm soon to be the interim executive dean of Assessment and Academic Affairs. It's a god-awful title. So let's hope the job is not god-awful.
So does it acronym well?
No, it's just sort of like D's and A's, like duh. So I don't know if that's good or not. And I'm a participant here in this workshop on Wikipedia.
Yeah, we have a couple other participants who may or may not don't want to be visually present and may jump in with some audio. I don't know if anyone else wants to introduce yourselves auditorily, which is totally fine if you don't.
Okay.
Okay. So we had a small but enthusiastic crowd. We had 3 participants in the workshop. And I think we covered some good ground.
So what are the sort of key insights so far?
Well, I'm totally new to Wikipedia, so I even had to set up an account today and decide what name I was going to use, through the process, because I've decided I don't want to use my real name because I'm not comfortable yet with everything. So I came to get some basic understanding about how it works, how to build credibility, how the sites are sort of created, some of the ins and outs, the infamous Mr. Ollie on this one site who, reverts things back to the way they were.
Edit wars.
So just getting a sort of a broad sense of the landscape, what happens, how it happens, and then I'll make some decisions down the road once I'm more comfortable with it about whether I want to make any components of it part of what I do in my class.
Anyone else want to chime in?
I was really interested in the kind of culture of Wikipedia. And the discussion that we had on what might make a good Wikipedia article and what are the possible problems that we might not really think about in general.
Mm-hmm. Just a side note for the people that aren't in front, you're not in a great position for the microphone, so you might have to talk a little louder for us to hear you.
Outside voices. Yeah, so I mean, part of the framing that brought me to the session, and that we spent a little bit of time talking about is the notorious lack of diversity in terms of editors and on Wikipedia and also in the content. So the backstory is that Autumn Keynes and I had started looking at, actually Autumn did first, the EdTech, the page on Wikipedia that's titled Educational Technology. And if you look at that page, it's fascinating because it's very long, first of all. There are 128 other pages that redirect to it, which is interesting. It's highly watched, and it uses the AACE definition of educational technology, which is it's a professional association of instructional designers and educational technologists. It's one perspective on educational technology. It's one definition. It's one way of thinking about it, and the whole page is constructed around that. And Autumn decided there are no critical perspectives. There's no mention of critical digital pedagogy. In fact, it only mentions constructivism, behaviorism, and cognitivism when it talks about learning theory at all, and it's a very small component. So, and it just talks about your typical when that history of ed tech talks about a lot of it's a lot of old white guys, right? So Autumn went in and tried to make some edits that were immediately reverted, and by other people who were authors that were watching, or editors that were watching the page that had more credibility in the system. So, Autumn and I had a conversation, and we talked a bit with Amy Collier, who's my boss at Middlebury and has a lot of experience in editing Wikipedia through the Newspapers on Wikipedia project that she's worked on with Mike Caulfield. And we talked a little bit about what it means to build credit, why those edits were reverted immediately, what it means to build credibility in the system, strategizing. So before we dove into editing, that was really at the whole end. We first decided, we looked at some of the pages, built some criteria for considering how to assess whether a page met some of these diversity and critical perspectives requirements that we wanted. And then we talked about, you have to make a plan for editing, right, to build credibility in the system as new editors and that sort of thing. So so that's what we've spent our time doing.
Interesting. I'm intrigued by that getting reverted right away. I'm also interested. I just looked it up, and I'm like, why would e-learning redirect to educational technology?
Computer-assisted instruction redirects, online learning redirects. I mean, these are not pages that are synonyms for educational technology.
Yeah. Totally. I was like, whoa, but they're, no.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. Wow. And so what are some of the strategies? Like what are some of the things that people can do to get sort of some credibility before making those changes?
What we talked about was going on to pages that don't have very many views, that might not be very active at all, that need work done on them perhaps, and building credibility by making edits to those sorts of pages, so that you build the credibility and then go to the page that you really want to be working with perhaps, and be able then to make those changes without having the reversion problem, I guess.
And when you're editing, there are some things to keep in mind too. For example, sourcing, right? So there are certain, as you build the page, certain ways, certain types of information on the page, maintaining a neutral perspective, right? Making sure that you are adequately sourcing to a variety of different pages. What were some of the other things we talked about?
Oh, we have lots of.
I'm blocking my notes.
The range of materials, current and historical, so you've got a range.
Right.
Appropriate visual representation, if that's an important component of it. And then what sort of pages are linking off of that?
Yep.
Right, that it's linking out to.
And building notability.
Yeah.
So when you're working in a page, demonstrating the notability. So one of the things that we talked about, we were going to read and we didn't quite have a chance, was an article that told the story of a Wikipedia entry, a biography that someone was that made a page for an African-American chemist who was the first to do some kind of chemical process. I can't remember exactly what her contribution was, but made a contribution to her field. And so someone tried to create a Wikipedia page for her. Even though they included sort of check the box of the notability requirement, which is demonstrating notability, and that looks different in different fields. So for her, it's published, right? So what is this? What is the scientist published? You know, where maybe awards that she may have won for the work, right? Things that sort of demonstrate the notability of the subject or the person. That's another important piece to do when you're building the Wikipedia page. Anyway, despite all that, this page was taken down. And so that, you know, the article itself was talking about how that pointed to some of what many other people have criticized as some of the inherent deep problematics of Wikipedia, and the fact that the vast majority of the editors, 80 or 90% or something like that, are white male and things like that. So, but John, you've done a lot of editing in Wikipedia too. Are there other elements when you're thinking about trying to build your credibility in the system and the types of information that you might, or strategies, or the sort of the discourse that's acceptable in Wikipedia for building a page that you contribute?
Yeah, in terms of the content areas that we focused on, Wikipedia, you know, as you said, is really gender biased in terms of who the editors are. But then also the coverage is relatively biased towards things that you might predict in terms of, you know, Western European, American perspectives on things. So in my classes, we've added a lot of articles about Arabic scientists, about Japanese women who won Nobel Prizes and that kind of thing. Things that are really obviously important and yet weren't in Wikipedia just because of who the editors are. And so even those sometimes get challenged in really surprising ways. You'll have, you know, some hugely notable, important historical figure who's, you know, featured in lots of books, and then they'll get flagged for not being, you know, sufficiently important. The main thing that I always tell the students is to get involved in the talk pages in Wikipedia. So every Wikipedia page has its own talk page, and you can talk through the issues that are going on. And I was just looking at the talk page for the educational technology page. And it's fairly active and details some of the debates that have gone on there. And then you can also talk directly with, you know, any other editors that you're sort of having issues with and try to solve it behind the scenes. And with my students, I always tell them that, you know, if you make an edit and somebody else reverts it, I can still see the edit. And so I can still give you credit, you know, if I agree with what you were doing. And then I would like for you to talk with this other editor and see if you can work it out. It's sort of a, you know, an education beyond the walls of the university type scenario where maybe you can convince somebody of your point of view. And that's a, you know, good practice of argumentative skills, or, you know, your ability to demonstrate facts.
So our little project here was sort of an extracurricular, if you will, sort of thing. But I know we've got people in the room, at least on site, and maybe some of our online participants too, who have an interest in using Wikipedia as in the classroom or in workshops with students. We have a librarian, so in training with students, that sort of thing, workshops and classes. So would you mind talking a little bit more, John, about the sorts of ways that you use Wikipedia in your classes? And it sounds like you assess it, for example.
And maybe also, like, how could you use it in a shortest amount of time? Like, I only have a certain amount of time too. So is there any way that you could think of to use in like one session of a class? I'd also like to hear about the other stuff too, but.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult. I mean, to really get students feeling comfortable in Wikipedia, I think does take, you know, 4 or even 8 weeks of sort of integrating it into a curriculum. And so I like having it replace, you know, a term paper or something like that. But yeah, you can, one of the things we've done for sort of a one-off thing is that we'll use my account or we'll use the instructor's account if I'm not the instructor in the class or whatever. And so we'll throw up the Wikipedia page on screens or print it out, and we'll have the class make edits, collectively, how do we as a class want to revise this thing, but then submit those edits under, an established editor's name, under my name or somebody else's who already has, the trust set up. And so there we're not teaching the syntax of Wikipedia and sort of the nuts and bolts of how to edit Wikipedia, but we're just, improving a Wikipedia page. So that's the easiest for a one-off. And we've tried doing it where everybody signs up for an account and then we all sort of collectively mob the article, but it can create connectivity issues. And if you've got a whole bunch of new editors mobbing something, they'll flag it as a potential, spam or whatever else they want to call it.
Or something.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of sort of more, large scale class integration, I started using Wikipedia about 5 or 6 years ago before Wikipedia Education existed as a spin-off thing. And so we were largely making things up as we went, which was fun. But you don't have to do that now. WikiEdu is a really good organization, and they've got at least half a dozen or 8 employees that are there to help faculty and IDs think about how to integrate this into classes. And they have subject specialists. These are basically like liaison librarians who are really good with, they've got one for the humanities, one for the sciences, one for engineering, I think. And they can help, even point you to articles that need work or help you find resources for articles that you want to work on. And then they'll also sort of shield you from the rest of the editor community. They'll put tags on the articles to say, like, this is under construction by students, and sort of give them some space. And they'll also walk you through the way that you can use sandboxes in Wikipedia is actually fairly advanced, but it's not in any way obvious. Like, you wouldn't know any of the sandbox thing that they want you to do unless you've really played with it a lot. And so they can walk you through how to, build in this sandbox, playground space. And then when you're ready, move everything over. So one of my friends who's a really experienced editor got one of her articles taken down recently. And it was because she had started a new article and had like a paragraph in it, and it was cited, but it was one paragraph article, only one citation, and someone came and took the article down. And she was like, what do I'm working on this. And they're like, yeah, build it in your sandbox and then migrate it. And so this is someone who knows what they were doing, is well established and has, credibility in the community. But even she, got flagged and had to do it a different way. And it wasn't polite. They should have given her some more space, but you can avoid some of these issues if you're careful about it.
Interesting. So it sounds like one practice is to only post your final-ish version of the page that you're working on, and work on it sort of not offline.
Yeah, it's slightly complicated by the fact that you want to be granular in the changes that you're making to the live article. Like, ideally, you would like to change one paragraph at a time, but you also want to have a complete thing that you're making your changes. So, like, if you started a new article and you ended up writing 8 paragraphs, it would be good to move those paragraphs over like one by one into the article, so that if anybody challenges any of the particular article paragraphs, they're not challenging the entire article. And yet at the same time, it's a complicated thing, and they're not really clear on what best practices are, despite the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of users. And so it's a bit of a dance. But the WikiEdu group is really nice for walking you through that. And it's just wikiedu.org or something like that. And they also will help you set up they've got a curriculum of, here's how to set up an account, and here's how to get started. And they've got a whole training program to walk students through if you have time for that, if you have, 4 or 8 weeks to really integrate it into a class. Like I said, if it's a one-off thing, if you're not really trying to teach about like the schema, what is Markdown, that kind of thing, I would suggest just using an established account and having the students do it in analog and then collect their edits.
So how have things changed over time?
Better support, and the community is less toxic than it once was. Not to say that it's actually not toxic now; it's just better.
Well, that's good to hear, actually.
Yeah, it used to be significant, and it was never as bad as 8chan's in the news right now and was in my mind. It was never that bad, but it's always been problematic. And they recognize that now. They talk about it. The Wikipedia conferences, they try to address these issues. And so they're attempting to make strides at it, and they're getting better, but they still have a long way to go. And the issues are still largely around representation and identity. In the same way that it's easier for me to make an edit and to write something about really obscure baseball facts than it is to write something, as a woman or as a person of color, or about topics that tend to have more interest for women and people of color. So predictable, but they're getting better. But yeah, that's we have at least half a dozen classes here on campus at OU that have integrated into their courses. And then we've got a couple of bigger research projects. There's a project out of our School of Architecture on what's called the New School of Architecture, which was a mid-century group of architects who have a particular style. And so they're going back and making sure that each of those architects have their own Wikipedia page, and then also sort of the buildings that they built and some of the other, uploading lots of images to Wiki Commons, that kind of thing. And so we're seeing it integrated both at the individual level, the class level, and then even the sort of college programmatic level. And that's part of a grant thing as part of their public outreach through the grant, is to improve Wikipedia. So some interesting projects.
Yeah.
And so have you guys, and this is to the Sarahs, did you guys identify some of those pages that were going to be easier ones to tackle? Like, what did you find? What did you figure out?
Well, one that I found is I looked down at the list of the redirects, and one of them is student response systems. So what used to be like clickers in class respond. There is no page for that. It just automatically redirects to the ed tech. So that might be a page that could be developed, since there isn't one at the moment. It's not even a stub page. There's nothing for that at the moment.
Yeah, so we talked about strategies for identifying the low-hanging fruit pages, and then didn't quite get all the way. didn't get quite all the way there, but that was one strategy that we were using, was looking at those pages that redirected and using. There's a tool, WMFlabs.org has a tool that shows you all the pages that redirect to a given page in Wikipedia, and it also shows you how many page views it has and the daily average, each of those pages and the daily average. So we were looking for pages that, again, were not watched, to reduce the likelihood that someone would jump in and try to reverse what you were doing. So that was one. I know Autumn was really interested in editing the blended learning page, which I think also redirects to educational technology, but which isn't so much.
So if it redirects, does that mean that, like, how would you edit it then?
So again, the non-expert way that I did it, and John probably has a better idea, but I searched in Wikipedia's interface. I use their search box to search for, actually one that's on the list is teaching machines. So I searched for teaching machines, and it brought me to the educational technology page, but underneath that title, educational technology, it said redirected from teaching machines, and that was linked and underlined. It was clearly a link. So I clicked on that, and it brought me to the page itself, which teaching machines was empty, didn't have anything, but teaching machine actually is developed out. So really, those two pages just need to be connected. But
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and you can also start from scratch. And I don't know, John, is there a benefit to editing an existing page versus starting a page from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, the existing pages, at least, if it's not already flagged, they probably won't flag it for deletion. Whereas you have to make an explicit argument for the inclusion of a new article. You have to show very quickly that it meets their criteria for importance, I guess. Part of it is that they don't want people, they don't want me to write an article about myself, or me to write an article about my boss. And so they're trying to, that's part of the importance argument. But they often do take that too far, and especially where it, like I said, where it relates to underrepresented people and issues on the site, is that they get a little over aggressive about that. We've had articles about these philosophers who've had 800 years of influence on wide fields of philosophy, and they flag them as unimportant. And it's like, they're yeah, you can't write about philosophy without talking about these people. They're important. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just looking at from the educational technology page. You can also go into that talk section, and it shows that it fits into a couple of different categories, including an education category, a technology category, psychology as a category, which is sort of interesting, and a few others. And so you can see from some of those categories that this is like a B-class education article. And then you can click on that link and it'll show you other B-class education articles. Or you can find, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we noticed the B class thing and we actually didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, so they grade them in the same way that we theoretically grade papers, A through, I think they go A through F. They might go A, C, and then there's below C, at the very beginning is a stub level article. So you've created a thing, but there's nothing more than a sentence there. So I think it goes like stub, starter, and then maybe CBA, and then there's stuff above A. There's excellent, and there's featured article, I think is maybe the highest. And so a B class would be improvable, in the same way that we might think of a B in paper as could be better. Not bad, but could be better. And anyway, they'll appreciate changes more. They'll let you change more C and D class or C and below class papers or articles. They'll try to protect the like FA, the things that are the highest ranked. They are very protective of.
So that's another strategy is try to look for articles that are graded C or below.
Yeah, and you can find these lists of extant, and especially things that are like they'll have a table of it, and then you can see these are like stub level articles. Like we would really like someone to edit these, and even if your edits are not the best, they're appreciative of any further information there.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I always tell the students and anybody that I'm working with is that some things are hard to find information on, and if you can't find a couple of published sources about whatever it is that you want to write about, or that are at least tangentially about that thing, you might not be able to really edit the Wikipedia article because they do want you to cite published stuff. And in this educational technology article, several things have been reverted where people were citing blogs, and they still are. They don't trust blogs in the same way that they trust published things, which is bad for us because we all write blogs.
Well, and it's kind of ironic because, of course, the published things don't trust Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And it's like, and so Wikipedia is trying to get trusted, and yet, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to write about educational technology, you would be citing the blogs of everybody who's at DigPed Lab or Rebecca or Maha, or you'd be citing these blogs that they don't trust. So it's tough to update. When you think about OLC, a lot of the best work. I mean, Angela Gunder's been writing great stuff for OLC on their blog over the last few weeks, and that's the best place to find out about what's coming up with OLC. So anyway.
I notice we're coming close to the end of our time here, slated, and the next thing that is happening at Digital Pedagogy Lab is from 4:30 to 6. There's on the schedule. It's been called a show and tell. So I think each of the tracks, at least the leaders of each of the tracks, has a table where you can where everyone can walk around and find out a little bit about what's been going on in different tracks. So that's neat, and I think a little bit new this year. And then I think they also called it a social hour, so maybe there'll be drinks. I don't know.
And there's also another virtually connecting session happening in room 213, I believe.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, we'll wave. That room is glass. It's all glass, so we'll wave to them. You can wave to them and kind of.
Apparently, there were dogs right outside yesterday.
Yes, yesterday the therapy dogs. So
excellent. So I'm going to turn off the live broadcast, and the folks that are watching live, we will be back on probably in about 15 minutes. And so with that, I'll